Well, welcome to the Viking Press Pass. I'm Matthew Nickel, voice of Augustana football, and joining me today is Johnny Breeden, defensive back here for the Vikings. So, JB, thanks for joining me.
Hey, yeah, thanks for having me. I'm Johnny Breeden. I play strong safety here for Augustana Vikings, and I'm one of our captains this year.
So, let's start. I mean, we're in week 4, of your senior season. Vikings are 1-1 on the year right now. Let's talk a little bit about kind of this past Saturday's game there at Wheaton. Obviously, the outcome was not what we expected, but kind of going back to Saturday, I mean, what were just some of the problems they kind of posed for us, like defensively? Was it like size, scheme, speed? Just did a lot of different things that we weren't anticipating. Any insight there?
Yeah, they actually didn't do too much that we weren't anticipating. We kind of just shot ourselves in the foot basically all night. As you would know, as watching the game, we got them to third down repeatedly, and forced a lot of double-digit drives. But for some reason, we just couldn't close it out on third down. I know we had multiple third and longs over 10 yards, and we would have a busted under coverage, whether that be a backer or a DB. It just seemed we'd have 10 guys in the right place, and they'd find the 11th guy who was out of place. And that's just what happened all game, basically.
Yeah, and they're ranked teams. I mean, they've got a lot of skill, a lot of speed, and they had 2 weeks to game plan for us too. So it's a tough first week, man, out of the gate going into the CCIW conference. So, but you as a captain, which congratulations, by the way. I mean, I think that's a high honor. And what's the message to your teammates, either coming out of the game or kind of kicking off this week? What's that message kind of back to your team that you've been helping to send?
Well, I think one thing that I've kind of talked about this week is that now it's how we reply, how we respond to that game. There's really one of two ways that every team goes after that happens. When you're expecting a good season, it's you either crumble and end up going 5-5 on the season, or you reply and come out pissed off and play a good game the next week and carry that momentum into the rest of the season, turn it around. So that's just what I've been focusing on.
Yeah, and I mean that's well said, because there's still North Central on the docket. We still have Wash U. Carroll always plays us really tough. So North Park's looking really good with Maddock, and kind of his last season. So I mean, there's a lot of important games, and ultimately, we can still shock the world. We can still do some great stuff, and I mean, there's still opportunity to get into the playoffs, or get another Isthmus Bowl berth. So a lot of football left to be played.
Yeah, definitely.
Looking ahead to this week, right? You mentioned, right, it's a bounce back opportunity against Millikin. The Vikings are on the road in back-to-back weeks. I mean, we're going from Chicago all the way down to Decatur. You're 2-1 against them. In your career, I think we lost 27-21, if I remember correctly, in overtime your freshman year.
Yep.
We had a big win, 70-0. In 2022, and then that was on the road. And then last year we had a big win against 42-3 here at home. What are some things that you expect when you go up against Millikin or the Big Blue? They always seem to have one or two like really talented skilled players in the backfield somewhere. What are you kind of expecting this year?
Well, so far what we've seen is that they're trying to find an identity. Seems that they've rotated between about 4 quarterbacks thus far in the season. And they seem to try to highlight their running back in the passing game, though. They run a pretty wide offense, and he's out in a route basically every passing play. So he doesn't stay in the block much, and they try to find it to him and put backers and DBs in situations that are favorable for them and make us choose one receiver.
But one of the things I was looking at, and I mean, we actually were talking on Saturday, was, okay, you rock the yellow cleats. Okay?
Yeah.
Now I believe I saw Caden had some on, this past week. And I ever heard there's something about yellow cleats, and I don't know if it's in the DB room or something that you've been talking about. But I mean, Any insight to those or?
No, I've just always worn yellow cleats in high school. My team was yellow and black, and that's when it started. Um, and then it worked out here at Augie, even though we're more of a gold and yellow. So sometimes my cleats don't exactly match up with our color scheme, but you gotta look past that. Um, but I think a couple receivers this year are also rocking the yellows. I think Stapleton, I could be wrong on that, was also wearing yellows or has been wearing yellows this year. Um, but no, we don't plan it. Caden, I think he doesn't even realize it. So now I'm gonna have to talk to him about it. But
Yeah, I went back and I saw like the custom JB, yellow gold cleats you had in high school, like your senior year. Yeah, I was deep on Twitter,
yeah.
finding some stuff. So, okay. So one thing I want to do is I want to try and have you give us some perspective here, especially for those that have not played in the secondary or on defense. Like, in those 20 to 25 seconds between plays, like, what are all the things that need to happen from recognizing formations, getting a defensive call, the communication? Like, there's a ton that goes on. Walk us through like the variables and the inputs and like all the types of decisions you have to make in such a short amount of time.
Yeah, there is a lot that goes on behind the scenes, but we, as especially me, since playing 4 years now, I've been doing it for a while. It's pretty much like breathing. That's why I'm able to do it pretty quick. But there's a lot that so we have the biggest thing that we do at Augie is we have to do formation like identification, which is tough to do when an offense is either in a huddle and they come out quickly and snap the ball quickly, or if they do a lot of motions. But we can handle all of that anyway. But once we identify our formation, then we'll have a game plan going into that week, depending on how to play it. Or if we get a call from the sideline, we can do a lot of different things, as you've seen through film and as everyone's seen through film. But from a DB perspective, it's very different than an offense, because the offense knows what they're doing before the snap, and they get to choose where they're going. They get to choose who the ball is going to, and they know where they want to attack. Whereas on defense, we're doing the opposite. And as a DB, you're doing it backwards in a back pedal. And so you really just kind of have to play it off the formation, and you have to stick to your tools. And as long as you stick with your tools, then you can be all right. So,
Do you think, because you played, you played with the majority of this group, Dakota, obviously all 4 years, his 4-year starters, Darren, Oregon over there in the corner. So it's like really the newer one, right? Is Breeden, the boundary corner, or Caden, who's, come in on some different series. Is there like a relationship rapport that's kind of get built over time that helps minimize some of that stuff, or how does the relationship piece kind of build in?
yeah, it's I was actually kind of thinking about this a couple of weeks ago. Is me and Coda kind of read each other's minds to this point, because we're both in charge of getting our defense in the right position, and I'll say something and he'll be saying it right next to me without even having to talk to him. So that really helps our communication. And then Darren also knows what's going on to a certain degree, but as a corner, you're so much more focused on the physical aspect of the game that they really try to minimize the thinking at the corner position. So we handle all that stuff. And so communication is easy whenever we have this like friendship, I guess that's the best way to put it, or relationship. And we rep it so often in practice that it's never even a second thought anymore.
So, so you talked about, now you got to make a decision. So you got the pre-snap, the ball is snapped. At that point, kind of how does your thinking and your reaction? It's like there's a blend of like, go make a play, that's kind of outside of it, versus you also have your role and responsibility. I mean, is there much that really kind of changes from that perspective? Like, what are all the decisions post-snap now that you have to make?
A good way that our coaches put it is the play is going to get you in the position and you have to make the play. So not every play on defense is going to be your play, and that's one thing that's different than offense. Because, for example, if I'm rolling weak and the play is going strong, there's not a whole lot I can do. I mean, I can hold down my side and make sure that nothing happens over there. But if it's like a run to the strong side or a passing concept to the strong side, I can only do so much. Because as soon as I abandon my zone to try to make a play, that's whenever these quarterbacks are going to find it. And that's kind of what's happening in Wheaton.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about your most like memorable. Do you have a most memorable game or play or anything throughout your 4 years here at Augie?
Well, I think the most obvious one would be my scoop and score my sophomore year.
Mm-hmm.
That I think tied the record for longest defensive touchdown here. I'm not actually sure about that, but I think my most memorable game is probably our Wash U game last year because that was good. We haven't beaten them here since they joined the conference, and that was the first time Augie's beaten them, and now we're hopefully we can stay on that track.
Well, you had an interception that game.
Yeah.
Kind of one later in the game down. I mean, gosh, they were down the side. I think the 10 or 15.
Yeah, they were definitely in the red zone.
So that was a great play because I wrote down there's probably two, right? Wash U was one, and then I think about the other one, the pass breakup and on that flag route in the back corner for Carroll, on their last drive. So two big games. That's all I can say last year.
Yeah.
Those were pivotal. Those are probably the two that, like, if we didn't win, I mean, we're kind of outside looking into the Isthmus Bowl last year for sure.
Oh, definitely, yeah. And I think I just happened to be the guy in the position there. And the Carroll one, I really don't think about that often at all. I don't really know why. It feels like people bring it up to me more often than I think about it. And that one just kind of went in slow motion, and like I was never worried that ball was going to be completed, that play. But the Wash U one, I definitely do think about more often because it was a diving pick over the middle, and that one I don't know if I'm making that play like 99 times out of 100. So like I guess it's the best way of saying it. I wasn't as confident in that play that I'm making that every single time as I was the Carroll game. So I think that's what makes it special.
Well, it's those big plays, man. Risk reward. I tell you, I mean, sometimes you got to just roll the dice and kind of let things work itself out. What about like players that you went up against, receivers, running backs? Are there any folks that you really either got excited to go up against? Felt like were good challenges. Anybody who's kind of sticking out in your career?
I'm funny about me is I'm not really a name guy. I'd never learn any of these receivers' names that we play against, even these bigger ones. I'm more of just they just happen to be the guy I'm playing against. So I don't really care who they are. If they're good, if they're pretty average, we're still going to play them the same. And if you're a good receiver, then I'm happy to play against you. And obviously after the game, we, shake hands and identify them and we talk, and it's usually a good conversation, win or lose. And we seem to honor each other them pretty much evenly if it's a good receiver.
Yeah.
So I guess that's the best way to put it. I've never really been a guy who watches film as like, oh, so and so is the guy I'm ready to go against this week.
Yeah. That's part of the defense too, right? It's like, I mean, you have a role responsibility to do, and if they're not even within your zone or within scheme, or they can become irrelevant here pretty quick. So definitely makes a lot of sense. So let's switch, to some non-football stuff to a certain degree. Now, I believe, are you a Cleveland Brown fan?
I am. It's pretty controversial, yeah.
Yeah. How'd you guys what's the connection to Cleveland and to the Browns? And
yeah, my whole family is from Cleveland. So my mom's side and my dad's side. And ever since I can remember, we've been having Browns games on in our house. And so that's just the team I naturally gravitated to, even though, everyone likes to bring up our quarterback situation. It's fun to pick on the Browns, but we're going to have our day. So I like listening to everyone.
Well, it's funny because it's like, yeah, so your family's from kind of the Cleveland area. You lived and grew up in Frisco. Now they've moved to Tennessee. So you've certainly covered some various aspects of
Yeah,
the
definitely.
U.S. for sure. Now I'm wearing a Sean Taylor jersey today, so certainly my opinion, probably one of the
Yeah.
best strong safeties ever to do it. But was there ever any NFL players or past or current that you like to watch kind of on the defensive side of things?
I mean, I liked Polamalu, which is funny saying because he's a Steelers guy. But as a Browns guy, I got to watch him a lot because it's a divisional matchup, and I just always think it was amazing how he's able to cover so much ground as a safety. Because even now, like at a higher level, I'm still trying to figure out like what type of defense they were running that allowed him to do that, and it I kind of see it now more than I did when I was in high school, but it's still extremely impressive, and that's one player I've definitely always wanted to try to imitate.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, in your senior year in high school, now you played inside Cowboy Stadium. You're in the blue-gray game. So, a lot of, the conversation around like D3 football championships and, who hosts where and what stadium and some of those things. What was like your perspective playing in that stadium, back in that blue-gray game your senior
Yeah,
year?
it was really cool. It was special. I mean, first of all, I was happy to even make that All American game, and I ended up getting significant playing time. I don't recall why. I think I got moved to corner midway through the game or something, and then I ended up playing like the full third and fourth quarter. But in that stadium, though, it was pretty cool. It wasn't too crazy to me because that was actually the second time I've played in that stadium. The first time I was actually like 12, I think, and it was at halftime when they opened it. I forgot how that happened, but my little league team got picked to play there at halftime, and so it was a cool thing. But with the whole Division III national championship thing, I've read up a little bit, and there seems to be mixed opinions on where it should be hosted, and some people think that a big stadium wouldn't make any sense because there wouldn't be enough people to fill it. But then some people think that there are people to fill it if it would just get advertised. And I think I'm kind of on that second one. Because if you go back and look at our attendance for here or away games, like I think Carroll or my sophomore year I think it was pushing 10,000. And that's just for a regular season away game. That was the official attendance. And so I think, and Carroll does. I have to give them respect. They advertise their football team well, and it seems like the school has a lot of support for them. And I think if it's a national team, I think those schools are going to have support for you, and I think the community is going to have support for it. And I think a lot of the kids in the area would like to go see a college national championship, depending on the division, because I think one thing that's getting messed up nowadays is that everyone wants to be D1. It's just all D1, D1, and if you're not D1, then you're not a football player. Which it would be awesome to play in D1, but at the same time, the skill gap between D1 and D3 is not as big as people think it is, and everyone realizes that as soon as they're playing in a football game. Like there's a lot of people who come to Division III schools expecting to start because what so and so told them this when they were in high school, but then they come here and it's a reality check, and they end up quitting on week 2 because they're 7th on the depth chart. They didn't realize it's real football at D3. So I guess to answer your question, the long way around would be I think a big stadium would be a good way to host a national championship. I just do think that the advertising needs to be there, and if it is there, then I think people will come.
Yeah, I agree, man. Like, even from like an Augustana perspective, I wish we'd continue, and I think we're getting better at it, is promoting not just football, but all the other sports that, go on here with inside, when I was here, through 2005 and really even up to like the teens, like, for a men's basketball game, Carver would be packed, every single game. And, it kind of varies a little bit now. But the promotion thing is kind of one aspect of it, that we need to continue to do. But But I agree, man. The skill gap is it's not as big as people really think it is. It's like I can't remember what it is. Like 1% of athletes go on to play like at the next level, within college. So it's usually the best 2 or 3 people from every high school team, get to go on and play. So, sometimes it's like it just depends on where you choose to go play. I mean, I know you've got friends, I think like Miami and Baylor and that you played with and against, and
and those are my like my closer friends too. Especially my buddy at Baylor. He's my best friend growing up, and we both had some opportunities to play somewhere, and he was actually getting recruited here. And then pretty much last minute, we both made our decisions, and he decided to go and walk on, and that was the right decision for him. And I'm happy with my decision here. So,
yeah, absolutely. Well, it's been fun watching you for 4 years, man. Now, many people may not know this, all right, but you started pole vaulting at an early age. And I think you ended up being even nationally ranked, early in your high school days. Like, how did you get into pole vaulting?
I got into pole vaulting in middle school in 7th grade. I don't know if there's an answer you're looking for, if you've seen something, but what happened was I think I was going to be a hurdler or a long jumper, some other field event, and then the line for pole vault was a lot shorter for the tryout. And so that's why I went over there, and apparently I was pretty natural at it. I think I won the conference in 8th grade. I don't recall anymore. But yeah, in high school I was number 7 nationally ranked freshman. And then for some reason first I transferred schools to my sophomore year, and then I had the yips and I couldn't plant it. I couldn't get up in the air for some reason my sophomore year. And I also made the baseball team my sophomore year, which they're both in the spring, and I respectfully like baseball a lot more than pole vault. And so that's really why my career ended. But yeah, I guess at one point I was a pretty good pole vaulter.
No, I think it's kind of interesting and unique, to see what people have done in other sports. I mean, football is such a good example of like the multi-sport athlete, as folks are growing up. So you don't always get really specialized, but so computer science and economics degree. Whenever life after football comes, whatever that looks like. So what type of career are you looking for and kind of looking into?
Well, kind of the whole point of these 2 studies was to have a broad range of options after school. And I figured if I can do computer science, I can do business. So that kind of opens up 3 different worlds that I could tap into. And this summer, actually, an internship with a company that's just now reaching into the U.S. And I ended up doing sales for them. So that was a great business experience. Whereas prior to that, I don't really have any official business experience. But the guy hiring me was willing to take a chance because he saw I was able to do computer science, and basically had the same thinking of me. If I can do that, then I can figure out business. But after school, I think I might try to join some kind of startup. I'm really interested in the entrepreneur side of the world. And if I do end up having my own idea, I might try to start something on my own. But I know there's a lot of startups out there that people have no idea exist that are just great ideas. And the only thing they're doing wrong is just how they're handling it. And so if I could be lucky enough to be picked to help a startup or create my own startup, or even just do something economically, so like some kind of studies for certain companies, then I would be happy. I'm just trying to keep my options open.
Well, there's so much. I mean, even in my role in talent acquisition and the HR world, I mean, whether you're building Power BI models or you're helping support a manufacturing organization and they're trying to understand all the data that their equipment is telling them, the environment is moving faster. and we're trying to make decisions a lot faster. So, if you have the tools, capabilities to like tap into that, it makes you super valuable, out
Yeah.
there in the business world, kind of like you said, regardless, you can go to a lot of different aspects. So, all right. So last one, favorite tailgate food after the game.
Ooh, that's a pretty tough question. Dakota's dad always brings me biscuits and gravy. He knows that's what I like. But I don't know if I could say that's my favorite. It's definitely one of my favorites. My parents are usually just the best host probably at the tailgate. My mom always makes some kind of like sliders, it seems. Obviously I'm not there to actually get them half the time, but I'd probably say last week they had, I think it was fajitas, or 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago now, my bad.
Yeah.
They had fajitas, and I like fajitas. That brings back some Tex-Mex that you can't find up here. So that's definitely my favorite.
Yeah, sliders, I will say they were pretty good. The fajitas were pretty good. And I love your grandma's Texas caviar.
Oh
Like,
yeah, that
that's
one's
the
a big
jam.
hit. Yeah.
That's the jam. So, well, good, man. Well, hey, appreciate you taking some time today to connect with me.
Sure.
I see you're in the stadium. So, but other than that, man, appreciate connecting. Good luck on Saturday against Millikin. Let's have a good bounce back week here, and then we're back here at home the week after for homecoming game. So
Yes,
it's
sir.
always a big week. So, but again, enjoy the rest of your day, man. We'll connect soon.
Thank you. Yes, sir. Thanks for having me on.